Hi there, I am Dorothy, and I am 67 years old. What I am about to share with you happened just 6 months ago, and honestly, thinking about it still makes my arthritis flare up from the stress. You know how they say you learn something new every day? Well, at my age, I thought I would learn everything I needed to know about family loyalty and respect. Boy, was I wrong. What happened 3 days after my daughter's memorial service will absolutely infuriate you. And what I ended up doing about it. Well, you will have to hear the whole story to decide whether this old lady finally stood up for herself or went completely overboard. If you enjoy stories about life lessons learned the hard way, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences from folks like me who have been around the block a few times. I would love to know in the comments if you have ever had to deal with ungrateful family members who thought they could take advantage of your kindness. Let me start from the beginning, because this mess didn't happen overnight. It took 3 years of me ignoring red flags to get to the point where I almost lost everything I would worked for my entire life. 14 years ago, when my husband Bernard passed away from a sudden heart attack, I thought my world had ended. Sarah was only 17 then, just starting her senior year of high school, and suddenly, it was just the two of us. Bernard had been a good provider, worked at the steel mill for 28 years, but you know how it is. Medical bills from his final month in the ICU ate up most of what we would saved. I had to go back to work full-time as a nurse practitioner at Riverside Medical Center, something I would only done part-time while Sarah was growing up. Those first few years were rough. I will not lie. Some nights, I would come home from a 12-hour shift and find Sarah doing homework at the kitchen table, and she would already have dinner waiting for me. That girl was mature beyond her years, always thinking about others before herself. She got a full scholarship to Ohio State for nursing, just like her mom. And I was so proud I cried for a week straight. It was during her junior year that she brought Ryan home for Thanksgiving. I remember opening the front door of our little Victorian house on Maple Street and seeing this tall, charming young man with perfect teeth and a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. He brought me flowers, called me Mrs. Henderson, even though I told him Dorothy was fine, and complimented everything from my green bean casserole to the way I would decorated the living room. Ryan was studying business management, planned to get into real estate development after graduation. He had all these big dreams about flipping houses and creating sustainable communities, his words, not mine. He would spread out these glossy brochures on our dining room table, pointing to pictures of modern developments and explaining his vision for affordable luxury, living with the enthusiasm of a televangelist. The way he talked, you would think he was going to single-handedly solve the housing crisis in Ohio while making millions in the process. Sarah just lit up when he spoke, hanging on every word like he was reciting poetry instead of talking about profit margins and zoning laws. I remember thinking it was sweet how supportive she was, how she believed so completely in his dreams. If only I would paid more attention to how those dreams never seemed to include anyone but himself. After years of Sarah dating boys who couldn't hold a conversation or showed up to dinner in wrinkled t-shirts, Ryan seemed like a genuine catch. He was polite, ambitious, and clearly devoted to my daughter. When he asked for my blessing to propose the following Christmas, I gave it without hesitation. The wedding was beautiful. I would manage to save up $35,000 over the year's money I would originally set aside for my own retirement, thinking maybe Bernard and I would travel to Ireland, like we would always talked about. Instead, every penny went toward giving Sarah the wedding of her dreams. We had the ceremony at St. Mary's downtown, with reception at the historic Riverside Inn. The flowers alone cost more than I used to spend on groceries in 6 months. But seeing Sarah walk down the aisle in her grandmother's lace dress, knowing she was marrying someone who seemed to genuinely love her, made every penny worth it. Ryan's family contributed too, of course, but they were more the Pinterest wedding vision type, while I was the pay-for-it-to-happen type. His mother spent weeks agonizing over centerpiece options, while I quietly handled the catering deposits and photographer fees. I didn't mind. I would never been one for the spotlight anyway, and Sarah's happiness was worth more than any retirement cruise. After the honeymoon, reality set in pretty quickly. Ryan and Sarah moved into a tiny apartment near the university, while he finished his degree and she started working at Children's Hospital. They were happy, but I could see the stress building. Student loans, car payments, rent, all the things young couples deal with these days. Sarah would call me every Sunday, and gradually those calls went from excited updates about married life to worried conversations about making ends meet. That is when I made the decision that would change everything, though I didn't know it at the time. "Why don't you two look for a house?" I suggested during one of our Sunday calls. "I have been thinking about downsizing anyway, and if you find something you love, I could help with the down payment." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then Sarah started crying, not sad tears, but the overwhelming relief kind that happens when someone throws you a lifeline when you are drowning. Within 2 weeks, Ryan had found what he called the perfect starter home, a 4-bedroom colonial, in a nice suburb about 20 minutes from both their jobs. The asking price was $220,000, which seemed reasonable enough for the neighborhood. When they showed me the listing photos, I could see why Sarah had fallen in love with it. Big windows that let in tons of natural light, original hardwood floors that just needed refinishing, a kitchen that actually had counter space instead of the galley-style cramped quarters they were used to, and a backyard perfect for the grandchildren I hoped would come along eventually. There was even a finished basement where Ryan could set up his home office, and a 2-car garage that meant Sarah wouldn't have to scrape ice off her windshield during Ohio winters. But here is what I didn't tell them. At the time, I wasn't just helping with a down payment. I was buying the entire house myself. You see, I would learned a few things about financial protection during my years as a single mother. I would seen too many women lose everything when marriages went bad, and I wanted to make sure Sarah always had a roof over her head no matter what happened. So I worked with a lawyer to structure the purchase in my name alone, with Sarah and Ryan as tenants paying what they thought was a mortgage but was actually rent to me. I told them I was co-signing to help them qualify, when in reality, I was protecting my daughter's future in the only way I knew how. I ended up putting down $48,000, every cent of my retirement savings, plus a small loan against my own house. But seeing Sarah and Ryan get the keys to their first home, watching them paint the walls and pick out furniture, made me feel like I would finally done something really meaningful with my money. Ryan was so grateful. He actually got choked up when he thanked me, promising they would pay me back as soon as his real estate career took off. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. They hosted holiday dinners. Ryan's business was slowly gaining clients, and Sarah loved her job at the hospital. I would visit every couple of weeks, usually bringing groceries or helping with yard work. Ryan would always make a big show of appreciation, telling Sarah how lucky they were to have me, joking about how he would hit the mother-in-law lottery. But somewhere during the second year, things started to shift in ways so subtle, I almost missed them. It started with little comments. When I would bring over a casserole or offer to help with something around the house, Ryan would make jokes about me checking up on them. Not mean-spirited, exactly, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. He would say things like, "Dorothy's here for her weekly inspection," or "better hide the dishes in the sink, the boss is here." Sarah would laugh along, but I noticed she started looking uncomfortable. When I would offer to help with something, she would sometimes glance at Ryan first, like she was checking for permission. When I suggested family traditions we would always enjoyed, like going to the Christmas market downtown or having Sunday dinner together, Ryan would have scheduling conflicts that mysteriously appeared. The real warning sign came during their second Christmas in the house. I would brought over my usual array of cookies and fudge, plus gifts for both of them. Ryan's thank you felt different, mechanical, like he was going through the motions. Later, when Sarah walked me to my car, she seemed distracted. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked. "You seem a little stressed." She glanced back at the house, then sighed. "Ryan thinks maybe I rely on you too much. He says married couples should be more independent, figure things out on their own." My heart sank, but I kept my voice light. "Well, independence is important, but family helping family isn't dependence. Honey, it is just love." She nodded, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. This was the beginning of what I now realize was Ryan systematically creating distance between Sarah and me. Not dramatically, he was too smart for that. Just little suggestions here and there about how healthy boundaries were important, how they needed to establish their own traditions as a couple. I started visiting less frequently, not wanting to cause problems. When I did come over, I noticed Ryan's demeanor had shifted from grateful son, in-law, to someone tolerating an unwelcome guest. He would be polite, but there was an impatience underneath, like I was interrupting something important just by existing in their space. Then, just before their 3rd anniversary, the phone call came that changed everything. "Mom," Sarah's voice was small and scared. "Can you come over? I need to tell you something, and I want to tell you in person." I drove to their house faster than I would driven in years, my mind racing through possibilities. Financial trouble? Marriage problems? When Sarah opened the door, her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. "I went to the doctor last week because I have been having headaches," she said before I was even fully inside. "Bad ones, Mom, and some vision problems. They did an MRI and," she broke down completely, "glioblastoma. Stage 4 brain cancer." The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah was only 20. 8 years old. How could this be happening? Ryan was in the living room when Sarah told me, and his reaction is something I will never forget as long as I live. Not devastation, not fear, not even shock. It was calculation, like he was already 3 steps ahead, figuring out how this diagnosis was going to affect his plans. The next 6 months were a blur of oncology appointments, chemotherapy sessions, and watching my brilliant, beautiful daughter slowly fade away. I took a leave of absence from work to help care for her, eventually moving into their guest room when it became clear she needed round the clock assistance. Ryan's behavior during this period was revealing. He would show up for the important appointments, the ones where doctors gave updates or discussed treatment options, always dressed in his best suit, like he was heading to a business meeting rather than a cancer consultation. He would take notes on his phone, ask intelligent questions about prognosis and treatment timelines, and nod thoughtfully when oncologists explained procedures. To anyone watching, he looked like the devoted husband stepping up during a crisis. But the daily grind of caregiving, helping Sarah with medications when she was too weak to keep track of the schedule, driving her to radiation treatments when the steroids made her too dizzy to see straight, sitting with her through the nausea and exhaustion that followed each chemo session, holding her hair back when she vomited, helping her to the bathroom when walking became difficult that fell almost entirely to me. I would arrive at 7 in the morning and often not leave until after midnight, basically moving in to provide the around. The clock care Sarah needed. "I have to work," he would say when I would suggest he take a day off to be with his wife. "Someone has to keep the insurance active and pay the bills. Sarah understands. She doesn't want me to sacrifice my career over this." Technically true, but I noticed his work increasingly involved networking events at expensive restaurants, client dinners that ran late into the evening, and weekend property visits that seemed suspiciously social for someone whose wife was dying. He would come home with business cards and stories about potential deals while I updated him on Sarah's blood counts and medication adjustments. When I would ask Sarah about it, she would make excuses for him with the patience of a saint. "He is dealing with this in his own way." "Mom, some people just cannot handle being around sickness." "It doesn't mean he loves me any less," I wanted to argue. But what was the point? Sarah was fighting for her life. The last thing she needed was me starting conflicts with her husband. So I bit my tongue and focused on making her as comfortable as possible. The end came faster than any of us expected. One Tuesday morning in early March, Sarah didn't wake up. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful, that she simply slipped away in her sleep. I was holding her hand when it happened. Ryan was at a client breakfast that he said he couldn't reschedule. Planning the memorial service was surreal. Ryan seemed more concerned with the guest list and reception venue than with actually grieving his wife. He wanted something elegant and uplifting his words, while I just wanted something that honored Sarah's memory. We compromised on a service at the funeral home, followed by a small gathering at their house. The service was beautiful. I will give him that. Ryan gave a speech about Sarah's courage and how proud he was to have been her husband. He played the grieving widower perfectly, accepting condolences with just the right amount of composed sadness. Several people commented on how well he was holding up, how strong he was being. I, meanwhile, felt like I would been hollowed out with a spoon. I would lost my only child, my best friend, my reason for getting up every morning. But I got through the service, hosting duties at the house afterward, and the endless stream of well-meaning visitors bringing casseroles and condolences. 3 days later, everything changed. I was still staying in the guest room, partly because I couldn't bear to leave the space where Sarah had spent her final months, and partly because I was helping Ryan deal with the paperwork and logistics that follow a death. Insurance claims, medical bills. Thank you notes there is an astonishing amount of bureaucracy involved in dying. It was a Thursday morning. I had gotten up early, made coffee, and was sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah's medical files, trying to organize everything for Ryan. He came downstairs around 8, already dressed for work, and poured himself a cup of coffee without saying good morning. "Dorothy, we need to talk," he said, sitting across from me with the kind of serious expression that makes your stomach drop. "Of course, what is on your mind?" He took a deep breath, like he was preparing for something difficult. "I think it is time for you to go home." I blinked, not understanding. "Go home? I am helping you with all of Sarah's paperwork. There is still so much to sort through. I appreciate everything you have done. I really do. But I need to start moving forward with my life. And having you here is—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It is making it harder for me to process everything." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What exactly are you saying, Ryan?" "I am saying I need my space back, my house back. I need to grieve in my own way, and I cannot do that with constant reminders of—" He gestured vaguely, like I was somehow a piece of furniture he was tired of looking at. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. Constant reminders. I am Sarah's mother. I am not a reminder of her. I am the person who loved her most in the world besides you. His jaw tightened. "Look, I know this is hard, but I have made my decision. I think it would be best if you packed up your things today." Today, my voice came out higher than intended. "Ryan, I just lost my daughter 3 days ago. I am barely functioning, and you want me to just leave. I am not throwing you out on the street. Dorothy, you have your own house, your own life to get back to." That is when something clicked into place. The calculation I would seen in his eyes when Sarah was first diagnosed. The increasing distance throughout her illness. The way he would been more concerned with appearances than genuine grief at the service. "You have been waiting for this, haven't you?" I said quietly. His expression shifted, became defensive. "Waiting for what? For Sarah to die so you could have your life back, so you wouldn't have to pretend to be grateful anymore." That is a horrible thing to say, but his voice lacked conviction. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after sitting for so long. At my age, everything takes a little longer, hurts a little more. "You know what is horrible, Ryan? Asking your dead wife's mother to leave her home 3 days after the funeral." "It is not her home," he said, and there was something sharp in his voice now. "It is my home. My name is on the deed. Sarah is gone, and I need to figure out what comes next." I felt like I would been slapped. After everything I would done for them, all the money I would given, all the care I would provided. This was how he saw me, as a temporary guest who had overstayed her welcome. "I see," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And what about all the money I put into this house? The down payment that made it possible for you to buy it in the first place?" He shrugged, and that casual gesture broke something inside me. That was a gift to Sarah and me. Gifts don't come with strings attached. A gift, I repeated. $48,000 of my retirement savings was just a gift. And now that Sarah's gone, I have no claim to anything. That is how gifts work. "Dorothy, I am sorry if you saw it differently." The dismissal in his voice. The way he was talking to me, like I was some confused old woman who didn't understand basic concepts, it was the final straw. Fine, I said, trying to inject some dignity into my voice. I will pack my things. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Look, I know this seems harsh, but save it, Ryan. You have made yourself perfectly clear. I went upstairs and threw my belongings into the same suitcase I would brought 6 months earlier when I came to care for Sarah. My hands were shaking with anger and hurt, but I managed to get everything packed when I came back downstairs. Ryan was in his home office, pointedly not looking in my direction. I set my suitcase by the front door and picked up my phone. If Ryan wanted to play hardball, I could play hardball too. 911. What is your emergency? Hi, this is Dorothy Henderson. I need to report a situation at 847 Elmwood Drive, Ive. Someone is trying to force me out of my own home. Ryan came out of his office so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. What are you doing? I held up one finger, continuing my conversation with the dispatcher. Yes, I will wait for an officer to arrive. Thank you, Dorothy. Hang up the phone. What the hell do you think you are doing? I ended the call and looked at him calmly. I am calling the police because someone is trying to illegally evict me from my property. His face went pale. Your property? This is my house. My name is on the deed. Is it? Are you sure about that? For the first time since this conversation started, Ryan looked uncertain. Of course I am sure. We bought this house together. Sarah and I smiled, and I am sure it wasn't a pleasant expression. Actually, Ryan, you might want to check those documents again, more carefully this time. The police arrived about 15 minutes later, the longest 15 minutes of my life, spent listening to Ryan pace around the living room muttering about crazy old ladies and legal consequences. Officer Martinez was probably in his 40s, professional but kind, with the sort of calm demeanor that suggested he would dealt with family disputes before. He had a young female partner, Officer Chen, who took notes while Martinez talked. Exactly the type of people you would want responding to a domestic dispute involving a senior citizen who might be getting taken advantage of. I met them at the door while Ryan hovered nervously in the background, probably trying to figure out how to spin this situation in his favor. You could practically see the wheels turning in his head. How could he make himself look like the victim of some confused elderly woman's delusions? Madam, we got a call about someone trying to force you from your home. Officer Martinez asked, his tone respectful but businesslike. That is correct. Officer, this man is demanding that I leave my own property, and when I refused, he became hostile and threatening. Officer Martinez looked between Ryan and me, clearly trying to assess the situation. I imagine he would seen plenty of these family disputes, angry relatives, fighting over inheritance, adult children trying to control elderly parents, financial disagreements, masquerading as concern for someone's welfare. Sir, is this your residence? He asked Ryan directly. Ryan straightened up, putting on what I would come to recognize as his professional businessman persona, the one he used with clients and authority figures. Yes, it is. This is my mother-in-law, and while I have a lot of respect for her, my wife passed away recently, and I need some space to grieve. She has been staying here temporarily to help with funeral arrangements. But I think it is time for both of us to move forward with our lives. I am not trying to be cruel, but I need my home back. Officer? I interrupted before Ryan could continue his performance. Could you please ask this gentleman to provide proof of ownership? Because I believe you will find that legally I own this property. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's mouth fell open, and for a moment he looked like a fish gasping for air. That is impossible. I have been paying the mortgage for 3 years. I have receipts, bank statements, everything. I went to the kitchen and retrieved a folder from the stack of papers I would been organizing. Inside was a document I would been carrying around for weeks, but hadn't really looked at closely not until this morning. When Ryan's attitude had made me suspicious enough to read the fine print, Officer Martinez. This is the deed to this property. As you can see, it is in my name. Dorothy Margaret Henderson, sole owner. The officer took the document and examined it carefully. Ryan was practically breathing down his neck, trying to see what it said. But that cannot be right, Ryan sputtered. We bought this house. I signed papers. I have been making mortgage payments. Actually, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You signed rental agreements. I bought this house outright with cash and a small mortgage in my name only. You have been paying me rent, not a mortgage company. The look on Ryan's face would have been comical if the situation weren't so devastating. Pure shock, followed by dawning horror as he realized what this meant. But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you tell us? Because, I said, feeling years of suppressed frustration finally finding their voice. I wanted to make sure Sarah always had a home. I wanted to protect her in case something happened to your marriage. I never imagined I would need to protect her from her husband's greed. Officer Martinez handed the deed back to me. Madam, this document clearly shows you as the property owner. Sir, if you are trying to force the legal owner from her property, that could constitute harassment or illegal eviction. Ryan's face had gone from pale to red. This is insane, Dorothy. You cannot kick me out of my own home. I am not kicking you out, Ryan. You are the one who told me to leave. I am simply clarifying who actually has the right to make that decision. The officer looked between us again. Sir, do you have somewhere else you can stay while you sort this out? Family, friends? This is my home. Ryan's voice was getting louder, more desperate. I have lived here for 3 years. All my stuff is here. Your stuff can stay for now, I said. But I think under the circumstances, it would be best if you found somewhere else to sleep tonight. We both need time to process everything that has happened. Ryan stared at me like he would never seen me before. You planned this. This whole thing was some kind of setup. No, Ryan. I planned to take care of my daughter and protect her future. I never planned for her to die, and I certainly never planned for her husband to show his true colors 3 days after her funeral. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Sir, I would recommend gathering some personal items and finding alternative accommodation for tonight. Madam, you have every right to be here, but I would suggest both of you seek legal counsel to sort out the details of this arrangement. After the officer left, Ryan stomped around the house throwing clothes and toiletries into a gym bag, muttering under his breath about lawyers and ungrateful relatives. I sat at the kitchen table, feeling strangely calm for the first time in months. Just before he left, Ryan turned back to me with venom in his eyes. You think you are so smart, don't you? Well, this isn't over. I will sue you for every penny you have got. That money I paid you for 3 years, plus all the improvements I made to this place you will be hearing from my lawyer. I am sure I will, I replied, and when that happens, I will be sure to mention a few things to your lawyer that might interest them. Something in my tone made him pause. Like what? I opened another folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. Like these pictures Sarah took of you and Amanda Williams at the Riverside Hotel last August. And these receipts for dinners and flowers you charged to your business account, the same account you told Sarah was too tight to pay for her medical transportation. Ryan's face went white as a sheet. Where did you get those? Sarah found them when she was organizing your office files. She was too sick to confront you about them and too devastated to tell me while she was alive. But she left them with a note asking me to keep them safe in case they were ever needed. I held up Sarah's handwriting, her final message to me. Mom, if something happens to me, I want you to know that Ryan isn't who we thought he was. I am sorry, I didn't see it sooner. Please don't let him hurt you the way he hurt me. You deserve better. All my love, Sarah. Ryan lunged forward, trying to grab the photos. But I was faster than he expected. For a 67-year-old woman with arthritis, I moved pretty quickly when motivated. Those are private. You have no right. Actually, I have every right. Sarah left them to me specifically, along with some very interesting bank statements showing how you were siphoning money from your joint account into a private account she didn't know about. The fight went out of him all at once. He slumped against the doorframe. finally understanding that his position was far weaker than he would thought. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to leave my house and never come back. I want you to drop any legal claims against me or Sarah's estate, and I want you to disappear from my life completely. And if I don't," I gestured to the photos, "then your clients, your business partners, and your family get to see exactly what kind of man you really are. Up to you." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing his options. Finally, he picked up his bag and headed for the door. "This isn't over," he said, but there was no conviction in it. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It has been over since the moment you decided Sarah's mother wasn't worth common. Human decency he left without another word. That was 6 months ago. Ryan never contacted his lawyer, never tried to claim any money, never came back to the house. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard he moved to Columbus and started over with a new real estate firm. Good riddance. I have been living in Sarah's house ever since, surrounded by her things and her memories. At first, I thought I would sell it and move back to my old place. But I have realized this is where I need to be. Sarah chose this house, loved this house, and in some way, staying here keeps me close to her. I have made some changes, of course. The guest room where I stayed during Sarah's illness is now my art studio, something I never had space for before. I joined the neighborhood book club, started volunteering at the animal shelter, and even began dating a lovely widower named Frank, who lives 3 streets over. The hardest part wasn't dealing with Ryan's betrayal. Honestly, it was accepting that I would enabled it by being too generous, too accommodating, too willing to put other people's comfort ahead of my own boundaries. Sarah's note helped me understand that she would seen the problem too, but had been too sick and scared to address it. I learned that love without boundaries isn't really love, it is just enabling. I learned that generosity without conditions can sometimes bring out the worst in people instead of the best. And I learned that even at 67 years old, I am still capable of standing up for myself when pushed too far. The funniest part, Ryan did me a favor by showing his true colors when he did. If he would waited longer, been more patient, played the grieving son-in-law card more skillfully, he might have actually convinced me to sign over the house or give him money from Sarah's life insurance. Instead, his greed and impatience revealed exactly who he was and gave me the motivation I needed to protect myself. Sometimes I wonder what Sarah would think about how everything turned out. I think she would be proud that her old mom finally learned to fight back. She would probably laugh about the shocked look on Ryan's face when he realized he would been outsmarted by the little old lady he thought he could intimidate. These days, when people ask me for advice about family relationships, I tell them what I learned the hard way. Respect is not optional, gratitude cannot be assumed, and kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. Set your boundaries early. Stick to them consistently. And never let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself makes you the villain. As for Ryan, I genuinely hope he has learned something from this experience and become a better person. But if he hasn't, well, that is not my problem anymore. I've got a life to live. Grandchildren to spoil someday when Frank's kids have babies, and a whole second chapter ahead of me. The moral of this story? Never underestimate a determined old lady who has had enough of your nonsense. We have been around long enough to learn a thing or two about justice, and we are usually smart enough to keep our receipts. What do you think? Did I handle this situation correctly? Or should I have been more forgiving? Have you ever had to deal with family members who took advantage of your generosity? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story about learning to stand up for yourself, please subscribe for more real-life lessons from someone who has been around the block a few times. Trust me, I have got plenty more stories where this came from.